A big thank you to everyone joining us today for the Future Schools Alliance webinar series. Each term, the FSA hosts online webinars as an opportunity to introduce you to some of the world's most inspiring thought leaders. It's designed as a catalyst for further discussion around the future of education. And for today, we warmly welcome you to our very first 2021 webinar, where we join Peter Hutton and Pasi Sahlberg in conversation. For those of you who join us for the first time here at the FSA on one of our webinars or on our YouTube live stream service, a very warm welcome. My name is Jen Buchanan and I am the convener of Community and Relationships here at the Future Schools Alliance. My first introduction today is Peter Hutton. Peter is the director of the Future Schools Alliance. The FSA works with innovative leaders who are evolving the future of education. Peter is a strong advocate for significantly improving the lives of young people by transforming the education system. You'll often hear Peter say, we must stop doing education to students and give them every opportunity to be put in the driver's seat of their own education. Peter is the former principal at Templestowe College, recognised as one of the most innovative schools in the world. My second introduction, a warm welcome to Pasi Sahlberg. Pasi Sahlberg has worked as a school teacher, a teacher educator, a researcher, a policymaker in Finland and also here in Australia. He works as an education policy at the Gonski Institute for Education at the University of New South Wales. He is the author of several books, and I'm going to read them from my list so I don't get them wrong. In 2013, he published his book, Finnish Lessons, What the World Can Learn from Educational Change in Finland. And this one, excuse my mispronunciation if it happens, the Gromeyer Award for an idea that has the potential to change the world. His most recent books include Let the Children Play, How More Play Will Save Our Schools and Help Children Thrive, and he co-authored this with William Doyle. Finnish Lessons 3.0, What the World Can Learn from Educational Change in Finland. And finally, In Teachers We Trust, The Finnish Way to World-Class Schools, co-authored with Tim Walker. Also on the call today, I'd like to warmly welcome FSA school leaders who'll be participating in today's conversation, and we look forward to hearing from each of those as the conversation unfolds. With all of that being said, I now hand over to Peter and to Pasi and truly look forward to hearing this conversation develop. Thank you both.
Beautiful. Thanks very much, Jen, and welcome to one of our first new style webinars where we invite FSA leaders to come on and be in direct conversation with some of the world's great thinkers in education and doers in education. I think there was no better person to start off with than Pasi Sahlberg, who's been a long-time supporter of the Future Schools Alliance. I'll just invite Stella and Nicola to come live into the forum. The idea is that perhaps Pasi and I start off with a couple of brief comments, and then it's a free-flowing discussion. Likewise, if you've got a question, by all means, send that through to Jen and she'll pop it into the chat. And in my own dyslexic way, I will do my best to read that. Now, Pasi, you and I'm just name dropping flagrantly because Pasi and I frankly have dinner every second day, but you were telling me the other evening that you're in fact surprised that you're an early childhood educator.
Yes, I am indeed. I still don't quite understand what made me an expert in that particular field of education as well, but that's true.
So how has that come about? I believe it's to do with the book Let the Children Play, and in fact, talking to your good wife Peter, she was suggesting a name change for that book.
Yes, that's right. You know, it's been interesting here. I've been in Australia, Sydney now about 2.5 years. So I feel a little bit like Aussie. I still cannot speak like you guys do. I understand almost everything you say, however. But you know, there have been a number of surprising things. And if I pick up something within the education, it really is this fairly weak foundation, I would say, compared to the any of the Nordic countries that there is in early childhood education. For example, in my university, UNSW, where I am a professor right now, we have not a single early childhood education expert there at the school. So everybody comes to me when it happens like this, and it must be because of this Let the Children Play book that was published about 18 months ago that I wrote with William Doyle. That is not exactly about early childhood education, but that's the other one that when people have a conversation with me about the Let the Children Play book, it's like default mode of thinking that we must be talking about little kids, the kids before they go to school. And when we wrote the book with William Doyle, we really had, the first conversation we had was how do we define children? And we decided that the children are like the UN defines children, anybody who is younger than 18 years old. So for me, this Let the Children Play idea has always been a kind of a more universal and more generic, not just the little kids. But here, nowadays I find myself sitting in panels. I've been in a number of panels, mostly virtually, but also physically in person, where I am the only male. All the other early childhood experts are female, and I'm happy to do that. I think we need to have a gender balance also in early childhood education conversations and debates. But I think there's a lot of work we need to do here in Australia to make sure that early childhood education would be considered also as a serious part of education. I often say, like many of my colleagues in Finland and Nordic countries say, that early childhood educators are the most important educators in the world. They do the groundwork, and if they don't do it well, we have a hard time in our primary and secondary schools. And if they do a good job, then everything is much easier with the children. So that's why I'm not complaining of doing that, but I'm just a little bit surprised that I have been given this hat that I never thought I will wear.
I think the scary thing from my point of view, Pasi, is I feel like perhaps subconsciously that's some attempt to put you in a box and take you out of the main game across schooling in general. What was the alternate name that you were proposing for the book?
There were so many, but the second the 2.0 version second edition will be really let the adults play and let the grandparents play. Let's all play, because I think it's an important theme. But I also I'm not particularly somebody who believes in conspiracy theories, but there would be a good kind of a reason to play with this conspiracy idea that here in Australia, because there are a number of people who don't particularly agree with me or don't like the way I talk. There are a number of people I met who really hate the idea of somebody coming and talking about Finland or other countries here in Australia. But maybe this conspiracy theory is that the people deliberately try to put me in this early childhood education box and make me an early childhood expert, so that I would be less harmful for because these conversations and debates are never really getting into the level of what the secondary and or primary education policies, or when we talk about ATAR or NAPLAN or funding, or it's all about kind of a later parts of schooling, but not so much about early childhood education, which I think is unfortunate that we are not giving our early childhood education people, and they're wonderful people around the country, a more kind of a larger microphone to say what they think. And I've been, during my time here, I've been trying to facilitate conversations and platforms and communities where people can come and talk about play, the importance of play. They're almost always early childhood education educators, and almost always female. And they all say the same thing, that it's very difficult as an early childhood education expert here in Australia to get a kind of a seat in around the table where the serious education policies or issues are discussed. So that's why I think we need to work on that. I'm very happy to be a kind of one of those people who is trying to kind of help those wonderful colleagues to have a voice in these conversations.
So we've got many people on the call today. So a bit of a call to arms from both the FSA and Pasi. We know that our early childhood colleagues, if you look at the size effect of the impact that they make, they have far greater impact on the future outcomes for young people. So let's honour them, and let's also make sure that if you hear of Pasi being referred to just as an expert in early childhood education, fight back on that, because we can all benefit from play, whether we be 5 years old, 20 years old, or an archaic principal like myself, unlike my esteemed colleagues.
Peter, you said it exactly right, that if you only the early childhood education experts, I think this type of conversation has to stop. And it's or if you're only interested in young kids, that's the wrong way to talk about these things.
Absolutely. So, look, I would like to open the floor to our esteemed FSA leaders. You'll notice over the coming months that we're certainly trying to move in a direction of empowering not only our school leaders within the FSA, but also the staff and the students within the Future Schools movement. So I would open it up, and who would like to launch the first question or provocation to Pasi?
Peter, I'd love to jump in. Yeah,
I love you putting your hand up, Nicola. You've always been a very obedient student. So
that is so not true. I just like attention. No, and I tell you, the reason I really wanted to jump in now is because I've just spent half a day with an executive leadership team talking about senior school and how we're going to do things differently. And the key player in the room was our extraordinary leader in early childhood education at our school, Jeanette Russell, who joined us for the whole time. Now, we could have said, oh, Jeanette, you don't need to come to the meeting. It's not relevant for you. But it's actually Jeanette's voice that brings that importance around. And it leads to my question, Pasi. If we're really going to honour things like time for play and the importance of play and get into some deep learning, we have to remove some obstacles from our curriculum. And so we're trying to create a senior school curriculum where we're not busy trying to fill a young person's day, but rather trying to fulfill a young person's day. But we're obviously met by, some bureaucracy that doesn't always work in our favour. And I was interested in knowing how you feel about the way Australia has this approach to setting achievement standards based on very much a coverage model of prescribed curriculum. I think the change our schools need most is around the content, that we get to own that kids get to self-author that, be agents of their learning. And I don't think we can continue to do that when we're told to cover all these things, not that we ever do cover them. But I'm really interested in, how do you think Australia can change that, and what would you encourage us to do?
Yeah, I think first of all, I want to say that there's nothing wrong, of course, in setting standards and putting high expectations. I think this is what all the schools and education systems should do. I cannot imagine that we can get anything seriously done if we don't have our expectations and goals and if they are not set in a way that will drive people, both teachers and kids, to do their best. But I think, when it comes to schools, and that's a huge difference that I've seen here in Australia, many schools, not all the schools, but many schools, probably most of the schools, is that, how the schools are then spending time or deciding, how to spend the time to try to accomplish those goals. And so I've seen, even starting from primary schools, and I do work a lot of primary schools here in Sydney area, that how busily they have scheduled the days so that there's hardly any time for kids to do their own things, and that's the best way. People often ask me that, so how can we integrate or create more time for children to play in a school? The simple answer is just make time for play, and make sure that the kids will have their 20% of the week or school day by themselves, starting from kindy, and they will learn to understand that this is my time to spend it as I wish. And most of the kids would choose to play. That's what the children are designed to do, and that's why most people would do that. And if we take that time away, then of course what comes into the picture is this kind of a play deprivation. What the kids learn in a school, in that type of school, is that the kind of a serious learning is when you're with a teacher or with other kids in a classroom and somebody's teaching you, and then you play when you have done the serious work and there's nothing else to do. And it's a very harmful thing to learn, because you carry that thing with you to the workplace, And if you're in a workplace and you think that, I play when I've done my job, that's a wrong thing to do in a current and future workplaces. And there are increasing number of employers and workplaces that don't need any more that type of people. They need the people who are able to figure out what to do when they have freedom to decide what to do. So that's why I think the solution here in Australia is really easy. We have already, if you look at the international comparisons, we have the longest instruction time within our school system than any other country in the world. So there's no room for argument that, if we do a little bit less, that kids would kind of suffer and lose something. We have a long way to go to the OECD average. Even if we took this 20% away, what we do now, and convert this 20% in your school, Nicola, and others, into free unstructured outdoor play for kids, we would still be above the OECD average when it comes to kind of a formal instruction time. And that's a kind of I understand that this is something that certainly within the Future Schools Alliance, a kind of advanced mavericks like you all are in education, that you are able to, you understand and you are able to do these things. But there are many schools who don't think like this. There are many schools who think like, we have to make sure that we spend all the time to make sure that all these ambitious and high expectations are met. And that's where we need a kind of a conversation and probably even education of educators to make sure that people understand that there's a really weak correlation actually between teaching and learning. It doesn't matter how much we teach the kids, and that I know what they're actually learning. But still, many teachers and many people, particularly many parents, think that more we teach the kids, the kind of more they learn. But there's actually a negative correlation. That more we try to give instruction and insist kids to do stuff, the less they learn, because the boredom and they're tired, and all these things come into the picture. And finally, to your question, Nicola, I think one thing I've learned here in Australia that was not the issue at all back home in Finland is that the parents has such an important role here when it comes to education. My wife happens to be the president of the PNC of the neighborhood local public school here. So she's working entirely, like she probably spends now 4 days a week working with the parents in the school and trying to help the parents to understand this issue and some others. And then the school, I work with the principal and the leadership team in the school, and they tell me that we do what the parents are expecting us to do. So here I think that it's extremely important to make sure that the parents understand what's going on and what is the best thing for their kids. We should never question, as principals, that you should never question parents' kind of intentions and thinking when it comes to their own kids. Everybody wants to have the best for their own children, but the school is not only for their children; it's for everybody else's, and that's why I think my way of trying to help schools to do what you were asking, Nicola, is to try to have conversations with parents and then with the staff, with the school about these things, and try to bring these conversations together in a way that people would understand that's okay, that's what we should be trying to do. But again, back home in Finland, we would never, the parents would never think like this. There were very few parents who would say that, I want to go to school and tell the principal or the teachers how to teach my kid. That would be considered as a completely unethical thing. It's a similar thing that walking to a civil engineer would walk into the medical center and talk to the head medical doctor there that how to treat the patients there. It's something like we would never do that. But here it's I think that the problem is we can solve the problem gradually, but it takes a little bit more kind of a thinking how to make sure that every child would have time to play in a school enough to have an impact on their well-being and learning as well.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, am I unmuted? Sorry, Pete. Great, thank you.
Hi, Greg.
Hello, Pasi. How are you? And hello,
good,
everyone, this afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. It's great. I look, as Peter knows in particular, we take an approach here, certainly in 7 to 10, where we don't provide 1 minute more of the minimum requirements in time. So that frees up a lot of, now we're doing that in years 7 to 10. We're preschool to post-school. We have an early learning centre on site here, and we're actually participating in a project this year with our early learning and kindergarten teachers and around oracy and play and the impact of that on learning. So, and one of our other schools in our system are doing great work in that space. I'm really intrigued. So my background secondary, the limit of my expertise in the early learning is to be known as the leader of early learning when I really don't have any expertise in it. But essentially, in the primary years here at St Luke's, we haven't gone cutting a swathe through time at the front end of the day when literacy and numeracy are all important. And teachers have been ingrained that they have to do this almost minute by minute approach. Now we're breaking that open slowly. One of the challenges I find is to articulate what you described as what free, unstructured outdoor play looks like. And, you know, in relation to your writing, I'm aware of the benefits that come with that. How do we take an action research approach to that with, you know, in a 4-stream setting? You know, any suggestions about that? First of all, the definition or the understanding of free unstructured outdoor play, its benefits and what to look for. Any suggestions there?
Yeah, it's a great question. In our work with William Doyle and with now some colleagues here, we consider free unstructured play as sometimes we call it the highest order of play, because it comes without any structure. It's a completely led by the children and the students themselves. The teachers or adults have only a kind of they're observers or making sure that the minimum necessary security and safety is provided. I think the kind of issue, the mistake we often make, in particularly in places like Australia and the United States, is that when there's a question about the children's safety and security, that we provide all the possible measures of safety and security. And we should be thinking about the absolute minimum. What is the kind of a minimum required? And this is a absolutely critical thing with this free unstructured play, because, you know, more conditions of safety, even if they're well-intentioned, more kind of a safety and security, more we put these do not things in a schoolyard or playground, the less kids are actually going to do things. So that's why I think, you know, this freedom of children to, drive their own actions and decide what to do is at the essence. In the book, if you have a chance to look at the Let the Children Play, we have tried to kind of conceptualize also this free unstructured play by looking at a small number of dimensions like self-directedness and intrinsic motivation and creativity and using imagination and focusing on the process rather than products. Those are all these things that can kind of explain, if you want to evaluate, if you want to kind of observe the process of free unstructured play, you need to have some of these dimensions that you're kind of looking at, and then kind of decide, you know, how much this is meeting this criteria of free unstructured play. But sorry, I have to close the door.
Just as Pasi's going there, also, I was about, as Pasi was talking, as you were talking, Pasi, I was remembering some reading I did a couple of years ago, where there was some deep research in the States around some playgrounds in Washington, Chicago, and I don't think it was New York, but a third city in the States, which actually had adult-free playgrounds, which were known to have far fewer accidents and incidents than places where adults were.
Yeah, that's true. And we have here in Sydney, there's a project called Risky Playground project within the city playgrounds here, where they have deliberately brought, you know, things that, you know, if you're not careful, you may hurt yourself, you know, kind of logs and things that you can roll. And this is, you know, again, the free unstructured play idea is based on this, that, you know, we trust children's own judgment. You know, they have to learn how to behave safely. And exactly as you said, correct, the same experience is here, that the cases of harmful accidents and incidences have declined in these playgrounds because the kids understand that, you know, there's a risk here, and we need to figure out, how to be safe.
Yeah.
But you also ask about the action research thing. I think, what we often need here and would benefit from is to do a kind of a teacher researcher type of action research on things that we do in the schools. And, one of them could be done by people, for example, in your school or your schools, who are interested in experimenting or trying something like this. Let's just, design a simple research project on what happens there, how the kids are, feeling about these things, what they do, go and observe these things. And then, try to systematically report and put this information and data together, and then communicate that to the staff and to the kids themselves. I think too rarely we use children as audience of this type of research that we do, or things we find out. But most importantly, probably with the parents as well. That what are we finding out when something like this happens? And I can give you one example here in the same school. We have 2 little boys in the primary school here. When we came here 2.5 years ago, my first question to the principal, when we knew that this is the school where the boys go, my first question to the principal, there's a wonderful lady. It's really, trying hard and doing good things there. My first question was that how much time do you give the children to play? I mean, free time. And she said that, well, we have the morning tea that is meant for, tea drinkers. My boys don't drink tea, so I said, so what are they doing? Because they really don't. At the age of 5 and 7, they don't drink tea. I said, no, it's just called a tea break, morning tea. I said, why don't you call it morning play? That would be even better for 20 minutes. But that, that time was meant to be that they sit on a concrete ground and open their lunch boxes and take something, normally something very unhealthy, wrapped in a plastic, and then go back to the class. And then the other break that they had was 1:20 in the afternoon. That was called a lunch break. 65% of the kids in the particular primary school had a very quick 3-minute lunch. Some of them didn't have any lunch, and then they went to coaching and tutoring, having extracurricular stuff to make sure that they have better chances to get selected into selective public schools here in Sydney. So it was a fairly kind of a grim picture. So I started to ask her questions. Is there anything you could do to make this better? Because obviously, this is not what the kids want to do. And now, if you go and see the school now, 2 years later, they have 4 play breaks. They call them play breaks, and they have more than 60 minutes every day for kids to play. And they didn't do anything, just rescheduled. They brought the lunch earlier, and now they have these breaks between the classes. And I said, my question to her was that, so what do the kids say? And she said that according to the survey they ran last year, more than 80% of the kids said overwhelmingly that this is a better system than the before. And so that's a kind of a thing. And, when we use this type of evidence with the teachers, and there were some teachers who said, no, we are losing too much time. And, the kids are they're not learning when they're outside. But there were also a number of teachers who said that when the kids come back from the play break, they're much more kind of better focusing and concentrating on the task, and they're learning better. So, but Craig, without this evidence, if we just say, particularly parents and others, that play is good and it's good for them, it's most people don't believe this. But if you're able to engage some type of action research or something that will be a little bit more systematic way of helping people to understand, and particularly the children's voices are extremely important. When the kids say that this is a good thing, like in this school, when the kids are saying that we love this new system, we love this idea that there's more play, there's no way back. There's no way that the school can return back to this old system, because the kids already say that, we love this, and this is how it should go.
Pasi, can I first say hello? My name's Jill.
Hi, Jill.
I work at Blue Gum Community School, and this is a topic that's a real passion of mine. Something that I'm thinking of as you're speaking is, particularly what you were just saying, is I think we can see play in lots of different ways. And one thing I'm really interested in is how we bring the dispositions towards playful thinking and playful learning into the actual classroom. So rather than it though obviously seeing great value in that high level unstructured times. And I think one of the things that really challenges is our trust that children want to be in meaningful activity together when an adult is not present. And so I couldn't agree more with the importance of that unstructured time. But one of the things, I'm also come out of an early childhood background, and one of the things that I think sometimes is misconstrued about play is sometimes I think people might imagine in an early childhood context that the teacher just stands back and observes and isn't an active player. And so one of the things I was thinking about, you're talking about action research is something that we talk a lot about, is what it looks like to be in a co-researching state with children. So coming alongside them and not diminishing the role of a really present thinking adult with children in play situations. And sometimes I've found, particularly in primary school contexts, where maybe a group of teachers have experimented with introducing a play session, they've then walked away and said, well, that was a waste of time. But often it's been because perhaps they've just stood back and not leaned in to that moment and just kind of let it be something that just rolled out in a more vague way. So that was just something I was thinking about as you're speaking, that importance of also having playful inquiry times where, for me, when children are being playful, it's because one of the reasons I think they love being on the playground is they're in charge. They actually are directing the experience that they're involved in, and they know that they have power. And I guess the question I have is, how do we bring that sense of engagement and agency and commitment into our classroom spaces? So actually the dynamics of how we work with children in our learning times, where the teacher is actively involved, can still give that platform for children to feel influential and powerful and playful in those settings as well.
Yeah, it's a really great question. In our book, we have a section, a long section actually, about the experiment that is now underway in China. I don't know if you heard about it. It's called Anji. It's in Anji County in China. It's somewhere in the eastern, about 3 hours from Shanghai, and they call it Anji Play. And they start with the very young kids, and this is really unique. It's one of the best examples in the world we saw when we did research for this book, and nobody believes that something like this can come from China. You look at the Chinese early childhood system overall, it's very different, but this Anji is like a really revolutionary approach. So what they do is that every morning, these little 2 to 5 year olds, before they go to school, every morning in the school, or what is early childhood thing, they spend outdoors, rain or shine. They're outside, and then it's a free outdoor play for 2 hours. They can do whatever they want. Just go and see the YouTubes, the crazy things they do. They paint cars and build things for the locks, and these little Chinese kids. But then comes the beauty, the art of this thing. It's not just a free play, but they bring these kids inside. And what the teachers are doing, they're filming these kids. So they film them with their smartphones, what they do. And they go indoors, they take their outdoor clothes off, sit down on the floor, and the teacher is showing some of these clips from their play. And they kind of have a conversation about what happens there. What are they doing and what goes in their minds and what are they learning out of those things. And the beauty here is that these little 2, 3, 4 year olds kids, that they learn to kind of understand what they're doing and why they do things and what they're learning out of those things. And that's something that, if we really want to make the kind of maximize the transfer of skills and habits of mind from play to classroom, as you were asking, Jill, this is what we need to do more. And again, this is where the role of the early childhood educators becomes critically important. That we are not just playing with kids, which is great. I mean, that's where the trick is done. But if we want to take it to the next level, we have to take it to the level of a kind of a metacognitive understanding of what do we do. And my recommendation would be to be very careful in selecting this very complex metacognitive, social, psychological things that are happening there. Just have few of them and focus on them, helping kids to understand what's going on there. If the kids have not done that in a preschool or kindy, then it's a kind of a primary school stuff that needs to do that. if the primary school teachers don't do that, then it's people like Craig and others who need to kind of make sure that the children, when they learn through play, that they understand what is happening, what is the, how this is linked to my learning and experience and change in general. But that's, for example, you can take any of those critical, important skills that the play, especially free unstructured play, is developing. For example, communication or collaboration or problem solving. How the kids approach a situation where they have to solve a problem, and help them to understand that this is called problem solving. You see a situation that doesn't work, and you start to think about what to do with that. That's where you start to solve problems, and systematically teach these young children that they would understand that now I'm engaging a complex, creative problem solving thing. Creativity is another thing that most kids don't understand the same way as we do. I've met many kids around the world who say that I'm not creative at all. I know that there are some kids in my class, they are creative, but I am not. And this is the thing that they have learned in the school or at home, that somehow they have had this experience that I cannot be creative because I don't have this creativity here. So what the play can do, that play can do this probably much better than arts or music or anything else, to help people to understand what it is to be creative, and how does it feel, and what does it look like, and how do I practice these things, so that everybody would understand that we all have this creative set of skills within us, that we just need to know what to do with that. But that's why I would recommend not just to play and try to focus on this whole range of kind of benefits, social and physical and mental benefits that the play has proven to give to kids, but choose some of them and practice those things so that children would learn to understand what it is and how to do those things in a little bit better way. But great question, Jill. I don't know if my long answer was to the point, but I like the way you phrased the question.
Thank you.
Pasi, it's Stella Ginman here. I'm the principal of a secondary high school, and you certainly spoke to me in terms of play and the power of it and unleashing students' creativity. It actually took me back to my early days as a drama teacher, where I had some students outside really enjoying themselves and what they were doing. And unfortunately, the head of maths took exception to that, because they were along the corridor looking through the windows opposite. And she actually asked all her teachers to sign a petition about my students playing outside and how distracting it was. So one of the maths teachers came up to me afterwards and said, Stella, we really didn't want to sign that, because it was just that it was so distracting to our kids, because they could see your kids having so much more fun outside, and they wanted to join in. So that was my first lesson about, not all teachers agree or can see the benefits of play integrated into what you do, even in a secondary context. And now fast forward to a year 7 to 12 high school where I did cop a criticism about a year or so ago from a director saying, well, I don't think your students should be having so much fun, because, we're actually engaging so many of our students in quite a challenging demographic here, where the students are engaged, enjoying participating, and it's incredible what they're doing, but they were having fun. And it wasn't really until we had a professor come across from the US who came and looked at all that, who said to me, when I told her about the criticism, she says, Stella, that's hard fun. It's actually really beneficial to the students. And it's incredible how the students are leading their own learning here, and the teachers are enjoying it. And we get teachers wanting to come in and work here, and the graduate teachers are feeling you can still deliver the curriculum, but not being lockstep to do it. And what we're finding is that more and more, the students now want more student voice. They're authoring some of their own work anyway on our website, but they want to actually run clubs. They're suggesting clubs. So we've already had a few start to spring up, like with anime and amazing origami or whatever. So hopefully the teachers will relax their control so we can do clubs one afternoon a week on a Friday. So my question to you is this, especially because we're seen as a forerunner, we're ahead of the game, we're viewed well, but we also you know, try to balance that with not being seen to liberate the students to an extent where other people can't keep up with that. But when you do have a burning desire to innovate, like my team and I have, and we can see the students pushing through barriers as a result of that, what do you say about the best way to remove impediments from an education system that's no longer fit for purpose?
Stella, you gave me a difficult one. I'm sure that there are Peter or others who would be much better in giving you a good answer to this. But yeah, you know, again, you know, this goes back to what I said earlier, and it may be that I haven't been long enough here in Australia to really understand, you know, how these systems change, because I still do think that you know, the voice that you educators and principals and teachers have about, you know, what the schools could do and should do, it's a kind of a lesser, more kind of a silent voice. Students' agency and their voices regarding what they want to do and learn are also not widely recognized. You just look at the mainstream media here, what the reactions are when the young people go to take part in the demonstrations of climate change or something like this. You know, this whatever you think about those things, but the system's responses are kind of a telling. So I think, you know, here, and I'm saying this knowing that I may be completely off track or wrong with this thing, but I do think that we still need to probably intensify the ways we work with the parent communities to make sure that everybody would understand, you know, what is at stake here, and you know what the school could be. And you know, that's why I value so much the Future Schools Alliance, you know, each of your schools and all those others who are part of this network, and many others who are not part of this thing, but they are already doing this. You know, the luxury that I have had here during my time in Australia is I've seen a lot of schools in every single state and territory in this beautiful country, and there are a lot of things, kind of a positive things going on. But what gets through often, and this is partly because of the, you know, how the parents view, what the parents value, but also what is valued by the system and the media, is not necessarily the kind of a true picture of what is going on. But you know, I would say that, you know, we need to work, and this is to you, Stella, particularly because you asked this question, that we need to work not necessarily harder, but we need to work smarter with the parent communities and entire communities to make sure that, you know, everybody understands why we need a change and why the schools should be shifting to different direction, pretty much to probably what you are doing in your own schools, and then, you know, think about among ourselves, you know, how to do that, and the role of students, of course, is critically important. But this is again something that is a quite new thing for me to think about because of the different culture and background where I came from. So there, you know, if you ask the same question in Finland, it would be very simple. You know, the parents would primarily kind of accept and trust the schools and teachers' judgment on, you know, what they think is the best thing for the kids, and then they would support that thing. But here is a little bit different issue. I don't know. Did I give you anything that you were asking, or?
Thank you, Pasi. You did. Actually, we could harness a lot of the parents' enthusiasm for what we do. The parents actually pitched biophilic schools to us, and we have outdoor classrooms from them getting on board with that, and we haven't really capitalised on it. So I'll talk this through later with Peter, and we'll take it further, because he knows that I do get a bit of, like, there's a few obstacles to overcome, and that's just part of the challenge. We love problem solving. But in terms of what we're doing, I think we've made some good inroads, and my team have done workshops for parents. So I just maybe think we're not harnessing parent voice enough. Listening to you, Pasi, we haven't thought about that.
So Peter, can I return this question to you, because I know that you have experience you've done, but what would you say?
So just a couple of things that I'd say there, Pasi. You know, we're in a esteemed company because all of the people on screen could be equally, applauded for their work in terms of innovation. But Stella and Greg have both been nominated actually for Principal of the Year, and been finalists in that process. So we're an esteemed company here. The thing that I would say, and I think you have nailed the issue, is that we have lost our voice as educators. The space has been dominated by academics and politicians, frankly. And, it's a little like having everybody else who's not involved in medicine telling us how the medical system or the health system should run. And what I would say is that if each of us, there's always, in any decision, there's always grey, white and black. And what I would encourage everybody to do, be they a teacher, be they a support staff member, principal, head of a system, is as long as we each push forward to within our limits of control, I think that we'll move the whole system forward. But if we just go, it's the politician's fault, or it's my regional director's fault, etc., if we all lean in to change together corporately, I think we'll be a long way more advanced. And I guess that's the other thing about the Future Schools movement, is that there is strength in numbers. And what we're seeing is there's a number of schools at the moment, and Stella's alluded to this, that are under pressure because they're pushing an innovation agenda, and they're getting a lot of pushback, frankly, from middle level managers, not so much the system leaders, for that innovation, because of course there's nothing to be gained by them in terms of approving innovation, because the principal gets the accolades, and if it goes wrong, they get the hit in the head. So what we would say is encourage others to join the Future Schools movement, so that we've got a voice at that table, even if you as an individual school or school leader aren't able to make that comment. Brendan, I'd love to hand over to you, because I know in the chat you and I have been having a great discussion. What's your question or provocation to Pasi?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And I'm Brendan Kelly. I'm here in the Growth Corridor of South East Melbourne. We've got 2 schools in our Quest Education family, and plus a few other things. So, look, my question to Pasi and to the others is, I'm really interested in how teachers can role model being sort of play agents, if you like, as long as teachers are obsessed with ATARs or all of that stuff. And also, in the secondary context in particular, teachers' timetables and all that stuff and marking. So I'm really interested, Pasi, how do we support teachers to be thinking practitioners, to really facilitate their own play, do you think? What are some things that have worked, and, from your research?
Yeah, so thanks, Brendan. So your question is within this play concept, right? Play idea.
Yeah, really, how do teachers sort of role model play in their professional practice? How do they, and how do we support them to do that?
It's a great. Yeah, it's a great question. This is probably one of the most frequently asked questions in these conversations, is that in early childhood education, and maybe in early years of primary school, we can have a little bit of play, but when secondary school happens, that's the serious stuff, and there's no room for that. Completely wrong way of thinking, and that's the that's the way we see that, and that's the way we actually write this also in the book. Again, I think the answer is extremely simple. Just let's make time for play, and in the I guess it's in the Let the Children Play book, we are using the example of this famous Google example that Google launched about 15 years ago. You remember when they started to kind of become a big tech company of innovation and new ideas, that they realized that people, the knowledge workers there, those people who are inventing things, they need free time to think. So they came up with this 20% free time thing. That was a kind of a revolutionary idea in a workplace, that you can have 20% time for yourself. You can do it as you wish. You can read a book or go and have a chat with somebody or whatever you want to do, but it's a time that you can use for learning and developing and improving yourself. There's a lot of evidence that shows that many of these things that Google actually was able to do are because of this, like a Google News and some other things, that they directly came because of this realization that you cannot keep people just in the workplace or team all the time. They need, people are different, they need different things. So that's a kind of in a secondary schools. I think it's extremely important to follow this Google example. It's a Finnish example as well. If you go and see the Finnish high school, it's exactly organized like this, that the kids have time for themselves to, make sense out of these things that we try to teach them. Some kids use it for, playing with themselves or, doing something else. But if we don't give time, if there's no time available, there's nothing we can do to have more play other than, try to figure out more learning through play within the pedagogies that we use. You may have project-based learning or cooperative learning or something like this where you can integrate some of these playful activities. But that's rarely as powerful as, having a school designed in a way that there's a, big part of the important part of the kids' time in the school is their free time when they can figure out what they want to do. And again, I hear people saying that, but it's going to be complete chaos. And how do we make sure that they don't kill themselves when they are together? Of course, if the kids don't understand, if the young people don't understand why we do this, of course they try to misbehave and do all these things that they are not supposed to do. But as soon as, and this again better than anybody else, if the young people, if they understand, we do it for you. We trust you, and this is something that we do because we think that you need this time, that you need to many of you like to play, or like to do something between the kind of a serious things when you try to learn new stuff. Most of the kids, and I'm sure that you would agree, would be during the course of time able to behave and take this responsibly. So that's why I think, in a secondary and high school level, it's a very important that the current and modern high schools look like modern workplaces where the kids have time and responsibility to use that time smartly. The other thing, of course, is the physical kind of a physical design and architecture. As you know, that most of the schools look nothing like a school, kind of a learning place. They look more like a prisons or hospitals with the long corridors, and doors are locked. And kids, as soon as they walk into through the school gate, they kind of shift their mind into this thing that there are certain things that we cannot do here and certain things we must do here. And this is something that you can do, and many of you have already changed your school environments and school yards and interior also in a place that is kind of inviting kids to play. In this book we write a little piece about. I had 3 years ago a unique opportunity to go and visit Sir Richard Branson's home in the British Virgin Islands. This was actually the second time when I was there. So Richard obviously likes me. So I don't need to call him Sir Richard anymore. He's just Dick or Richard. So, but if you next time when you go to Richard's home in Necker Island in British Virgin Islands, just pay attention to how this beautiful space has been designed, because there's nothing really fancy there. But what is beautiful in this place is that play is everywhere. That you cannot go anywhere where you turn. There's something there that is kind of inviting you to, come and try this. One of the funniest thing he has is that he has this beautiful swimming pool and a pool bar, where he's hosting his guests. And there's a kind of a rope that is like this wide, spanned over the pool. Mm-hmm. And it's there, but you don't kind of understand what the heck is this one. And then you realize that it's probably there to try whether you can walk this rope from the other side. But there's no kind of instructions. There's nothing like be careful or be aware of this thing. And you can try, Richard has all these things there for people to kind of, let's try what happens if I do something like this. When I was there, I spent a week there with him and some other friends. And I was particularly looking at this, how he has designed this place according to the kind of his mentality that is all about play, work hard, play harder. That's what he's saying. That, what if a school, a particularly high school, would be a little bit like this? That what if there would be kind of things that would make these students say, what is this? Let me try, what happens if I do something like this? And you know, the school would be immediately be a completely different place, and it would be immediately a kind of a place for play and, you know, doing all these things that we are talking about here. But, you know, as long as we kind of exclude all those things away, and we often do those things away because of the safety and security. Often we do these things because regulations and directives require to do that. But, you know, let's think harder about, you know, making a school, particularly high school, a place that would have these invitation points here and there to kids to say, let's go and try, you know, what happens if I do something. And now when I walk through a kind of a typical high school anywhere, it can be in Finland or here or Canada, they have pretty much a similar type of places. There's nothing really that would kind of tell you, send you invitation to anywhere except back home. But
and
that's
Pasi, I think if we don't provide those avenues, and I'm seeing a few examples now in high schools, they will find it through systems like the dark web or ways to get playful and creative. That then is very dangerous for them because they need to take that risk and they want that avenue to express themselves. And if we're not doing it and providing it in the school, they may find it in an alternative pathway.
Yeah. And, you know, the good question to young people, and you may have done this in your schools, but a question that I would like to ask high school students is that what would it be in the school, either outside or inside, that would be more interesting and attractive to you than your smartphones during the break? What would it be? What would you do kind of a more likely than, you know, sit down and you know, play with your gadget? And we can, you know, we can make it work. That's a doable. It's not an easy thing, but it's a doable thing.
Pasi, one of the things that's really in my mind at the moment, and this is away from the play discussion, but it's how much of what happens in schools can be influenced by the leader of the school. And, you know, I hope my colleagues don't mind me doing this, but if you look at the background to all of the backdrops, if you were a student that came into your office for an enrolment, would they see playfulness? It's just a question and a challenge. And in fact, we are working with one school, Port Macquarie Adventist School, and I put that challenge to them, and they're actually the principal of the school, Joyanne, is actually redesigning her office so that when the young people from their first enrolment interview, they get that notion that they're coming to a place that is playful. So I'm just putting a challenge out. You know, my colleagues know that I don't play nicely, I just challenge. You know, does your office engender play? Does it symbolize the playfulness of your own culture? Because if it, you know, I know we think of being principal as a serious business, but if we can't do it, who can? The other thing that I would say, Pasi, is you've set a new record. I think there are at least 10 references to your book, Let the Children Play. So well done on a little bit of cross-promotion there. Excellent work. I will point out that it does come on Audible as well. So for my dyslexic brothers and sisters or those that travel, you can get it on in Audible as well. So I'll thank you so much. You've always been a great friend to the FSA. You've been a challenge partner to David and Jen and I, and thank you so much for making your time available today.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And once again, let me say how much I do truly appreciate what you and your network is doing here in this country. It's extremely important work. And let me give you the last idea to think about. If you haven't done this yet, I think this is probably worth considering. I think you should make a documentary film, a movie in this early part of this wonderful movement, because, you know, this future school conversation is often, as you know, very difficult with the people. People have very different views about, you know, what the school could be. But if you may, a little bit like the most likely to succeed is my friend Ted Dintersmith's film that he has been using thousands of times in the community conversations across the United States and here as well, to help people to kind of have an idea what the school could be in the future. And you have, you know, all of your schools and many more would be a wonderful places to make a good 1-hour feature documentary about, you know, what are you actually trying to accomplish? What are you trying to do? And use that for these more informed conversations with your communities. If you ever want to do this, I'm very happy to be a friend critical friends with that one. But thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining, and all the best. Good luck with your work.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. That concludes our first webinar for this year, for 2021. A big thank you to Brendan, to Nicola, Greg, Jill and Stella, and Peter and Pasi. Thank you very much for your rich conversation. Well, I've got you all here as a captive audience on the webinar, and there's also a number of people over on our live stream. Thank you to that audience as well. Just to let you know, we have our virtual school tour of St. Michael's Collegiate happening on the 9th of March. Promises to be an innovative walkthrough of their Innovation Futures Lab. So please do reach out and let us know if you'd be interested in joining that. And for our Future Schools Alliance member schools, look out for the calendar invite. For webinar series, we return in term 2 with the second of our webinars. We'll be talking with Siobhan McHale. Siobhan is the author of this book, An Insider's Guide to Culture Change. A wonderful book in which she weaves in her personal stories of working with leaders around the world to create a culture transformation in a variety of different organisations. Highly recommended reading, and please do join us for the conversation. From all of us at the Future Schools Alliance, a big thank you and good night.